Good day to you all, and welcome back to another video in this brand new series I'm creating. My name is Mark, and this is where I want to give you the benefit of my 2 decades experience in running and owning a commercial recording studio, and my 4 decades as a musician, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that I've made over the years. Now, I want this to be as inclusive as possible, and as such, we will be starting at the very beginning to make sure you have a good grasp of the fundamentals on which to build. And remember, the only bad question is the one you never ask. So make use of the comment section below. If you're still too embarrassed, just fire me off an email at my email address, which you can find in the description. So, in the first video, we looked at the equipment you could use, and we blew away the myths about needing to spend loads just to get started and have fun. In this video, I want to talk to you about good microphone technique, because without it, even the best mics in the world will not save you. And as before, if you watch to the end, well, I'll have something a little bit extra just for you. Today, I will be focusing on recording the voice. Indeed, it may seem simple, but it can be surprisingly easy to make little errors that can take your recording from hero to zero all too quickly. The problem here is that almost all of us have experience of using and hearing the human voice on a daily basis, and even though we might not be aware of it, our brains are expert at noticing when something is wrong, even if we do not know why. This is why overly affected vocal parts can start to grate and become tedious all too quickly. So, without any further delay, let's dive right in. First up is your position in relation to the mic. Now, this will vary from mic to mic depending on the pickup or polar pattern. So let's look at these in a bit more detail. These are cardioid, hyper and supercardioid, bidirectional and omnidirectional. Now, you may well have seen pictures of microphone polar patterns. They are drawn from an overhead perspective, and they show you from which directions the microphone picks up sound and conversely which directions they don't. As can be seen from this picture, cardioid mics pick up sound from directly in front of them very well, and they tend to reject sound from the sides and the rear. Hyper and supercardioid mics are, as you might have guessed, variations of this, being even more selective in the areas which they pick up and reject sound. You may well hear these referred to as shotgun mics, and they tend to be used in more specialised areas such as film, TV, sports and nature, where you might be quite a distance from the sound source. Now, you will probably only have cause to use standard cardioid when you're recording at home, especially in the beginning. Then we have bidirectional. This is just as the name implies. It picks up from 2 directions, and as you can see from the picture, it is in front and behind whilst rejecting sound from either side. Now we finally have omnidirectional. Now, if you're very astute, you may well have started to notice a pattern developing. And yes, the name kind of gives it away. This one picks up from all directions equally, as can be seen from this last picture. This pattern is very common in lavalier mics, the type you might clip to your clothing, and headset mics. The benefit here is that the sound source can move in relation to the mic without the sound changing in volume or tonality. One quick additional point is that you can get mics with switchable polar patterns. That way you can choose what suits best in each new scenario. So, why do I need to know all this? Well, the wider the area that the mic picks up over, the more of the room that you are in you will hear on the recording. And even worse, any unwanted noises from the environment around you, such as family members shouting, the dog barking, or maybe the emergency services sirens screaming outside your window. They're all there to ruin your performance. And believe me, it will happen on the best take, when you finally nail it perfectly. As for the room sound, you'll want as little of this on your sound as possible. I call it room sound. It is really a reverb that you have no control over. Time for a caveat. Okay, some pretentious poser is probably now shouting at the screen that they like the old school and they use the room instead of applying reverb later. But aside from being a massive pain to get right, there are a few reasons to avoid this. When you are just starting out, it will make your life infinitely easier to record as dry as possible, i.e. without reverb, so you can adjust it when you start mixing. Also, I guarantee, just like with the ambulance ruining your best take, so will this. You will nail the perfect performance, only to dislike the room sound you spent hours working on achieving, especially when you start adding more parts. And anyway, few of us are lucky enough to live in places quiet enough to work in such a way, or to have the time to waste on such ego trips. I'm sure that's going to touch some nerves, so feel free to vent in the comments below again. Anyway, we are at the very start of our journey right now, so this will all be covered in more depth in the future. But when you come to add reverb during mixing, putting it onto a sound with too much of the room included, it's essentially layering reverb on top of reverb, and that will make the sound less defined and more messy. So, all this having been said, what it really boils down to is face the mic, and if you're using a cardioid pattern, don't move around too much. Let me set the scene. I've seen it played out multiple times. I direct the singer, or the rapper, to the vocal booth. I set the mic at the right height for them. I close the door and we start to record. Once the take is complete, they come out all vibes after nailing a killer performance, only to be sent back in to do it again. But why? Well, after I left, they turned off the light. They closed their eyes. They started to feel the tune and dancing side to side while singing or rapping. The end result is a take where the volume and the tone of the voice changes from start to finish. They had not controlled their position in relation to the mic. You see, volume is not the only thing that changes as you move in relation to the mic. You are also playing with the proximity effect. In the most basic sense, this can be described as the amount of bottom end on the sound. As you get closer, you essentially get a bass boost. Now, this is not an inherently bad thing. You can indeed use it to your creative advantage, especially with softer passages or spoken word. But when it is uncontrolled and not intended, it's really not desirable. Now, we spent quite a bit of time on this so far, so I'm going to wrap it up here by leaving you with my little tip on the use of headphones. Just because headphones can cover both ears, don't automatically assume you have to. Try performing both ways. With two, or having it half on, half off. Some people prefer one on, some people prefer both on. It's a personal choice. Neither is right or wrong. See, we do not hear our voice in the same way that others do. We hear it through internal vibrations in our jawbone and our skull, not the airwaves that are expelled from our vocal cords. So the sound we produce has to enter the microphone, go down the cable, enter whatever equipment we are using, and then be sent back through the monitoring channels to the headphones for us to hear it. Whereas with one headphone off, I feel I can hear my head voice directly, and it makes me feel more in control. But that's just me. You make up your own mind. Just one thing. If you're going to have one on, one off, rest the unused headphone just behind the ear. This will stop most of the sound escaping into the room, because if it does that, it will end up on the mic and it will corrupt the silence that we've worked so hard to create. Well, I think we can call it a day with that. Next time, I will look at the performance side of recording vocals. But until then, have a great week and go make some noise. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.